Koyaanisqatsi. 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 Boise. Boise. Okay, hi everybody. Yes, that was my little homage to Koyaanisqatsi. It's probably not very funny now, but if you go back and watch it after the movie, it's, well, I think it's super funny, but, you know, yeah. Okay, everybody. So I am once again not there with you. I was called away for the university to go do some data collection for Medicaid down in Arizona. Idaho's trying to implement a Medicaid managed care model, and Arizona did it a couple years ago, and we're going to see how successful that's been to do some focus groups with consumers. So that sounds thrilling, doesn't it? Unfortunately, I didn't have a whole lot of control over this, so I can't be there, which is unfortunate because I think, and Luke can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my perspective, this entire semester has been leading up to this one moment. The Koyaanisqatsi, and the Samsara showing here, which are going to be the next 2 weeks. Both of these films, in my estimation, are extremely important documents, and I think that you have the background, given kind of how we've worked on the semester up to this point, to experience and interpret these films hopefully in a constructive manner. Now, if Terrence Malick drove you crazy, these are going to drive you even more crazy because, well, just because you'll just have to watch them and see. But they really are outstanding films. The one, I think, similar element, or, well, it's not really a similar element, let's say. It's the person who kind of ties these together is the cinematographer, whose name is Ron Frick. So, although he wasn't the director for Koyaanisqatsi, he was the cinematographer and actually used some pretty groundbreaking cameras when Koyaanisqatsi was first filmed in the early 80s. Ron Frick went on to work with several others and ended up directing his own films, which were Baraka, which some people may have seen, and Samsara, which came out last year. And so they're in a similar style, similar messages, I think, although Koyaanisqatsi is definitely less focused on the human element, and Samsara has a significant amount of human element in it, but you'll have to see it to believe it. So, anyway, so Koyaanisqatsi, that's what you're watching tonight, and I am really sad that I can't be there. Koyaanisqatsi was a really, really important movie in terms of my, I don't know, what do I call myself, a cinephile? I don't know. In terms of my recognition that film can be more than just entertainment. I remember watching Koyaanisqatsi my freshman year in college, so that would have been 1991, at an art house cinema at the University of Utah, and I remember sitting there and, you know, a small town boy from Alaska, and this film absolutely blew me away. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what to expect. You know, we thought we were going to be cool, arty sort of freshmen and go out and experience culture, and kind of came out of there changed because of the film itself, and really just how overwhelming the film is on a large screen, and especially a large screen with a good sound system, because the other aspect of this film that's really important is the soundtrack. So I want to talk to you a bit about the director, and then the composer, and Luke can fill in any gaps I think that I leave. and then about the film itself and kind of what the intent is. So the director of this film is Godfrey Reggio, this dude, and Godfrey Reggio is an interesting character. He is massive. He's like 6'7", but he's this big guy. He was born in Louisiana, and very early on, actually at the age of 14, he entered a monastic order, a Christian monastic order, called what is it called? I actually wrote it down here and I didn't have it pulled up. Let's see, called the Christian Brothers, a Roman Catholic pontifical order. There we go. And he essentially spent the next 14 years in fasting, prayer, and silence. He kind of had a very, very conservative religious upbringing. Kind of didn't intend on doing anything related to art or anything. Had kind of planned on devoting his life to the church. Moved to Santa Fe in that process, and while in New Mexico, became engaged with several social causes. He just saw tremendous poverty. He saw a lot of the problems with the barrios in New Mexico, and he really took on, I guess, more or less embodied that Catholic socialist mindset, and founded several projects. One of them, Young Citizens for Action, which was a community organizing project. Another thing that he organized was a clinic, a free healthcare clinic called La Clínica de la Gente, and it provided medical care to community members, Hispanic community members in that area of New Mexico. And that he kind of left the monastic order to pursue this community organizing and more social causes. And in that process, interacting with these various communities in New Mexico, he ran across clearly the Pueblo people, the Pueblo Native American tribes that live down there. So the Native American tribe that had the biggest influence on Godfrey Reggio was the Hopi tribe. And the Hopi tribe are an interesting case. They are actually in northern Arizona, on the border of Arizona and New Mexico is where their reservation lies. Their reservation is actually surrounded by the Navajo reservation. So on this map, as you see, you've got the large Navajo reservation that covers the Four Corners area, and right within that is the Hopi land, which is what they call it. And the Hopis are considered by some to be the ancestors of the Anasazi. This also goes for the Zuni, the Tewa, and some of the other Pueblo tribes down in this area. But the Hopis specifically have a very long lineage and oral history that goes back to the Anasazi and the very, very, very early Native Americans and cliff-dwelling tribes that lived within this area. And a lot of the rock art, a lot of the kachinas, what people traditionally associate with Pueblos, actually come from the Hopi nation. So the Hopis still live a relatively traditional lifestyle. They live in these Pueblos. The Pueblos haven't changed too much from their traditional construction, and they live on the top of these mesas, which they had moved to prior. The Anasazis lived within cliff dwellings, and then they moved to the mesas where they had a better lookout for defensive purposes. But the Hopis also have a very long spiritual tradition tied with their religion, and the Kachinas are an important part of that religion. And in 1958, there was a trucker who was driving across this area who picked up a Hopi prophet, supposedly, and this Hopi prophet told him this prophecy about the end of the world and the coming of the blue star Kachina. And the prophecy was recorded by this trucker. It's actually been repeated several times, but in various books and other, new agey type gatherings. But the prophecy itself talks about the end of the world. It's actually drawn from these prophecy rocks. It's an interpretation of these prophecy rocks, which are petroglyphs, which have been carved into rocks around this area, that show the end of the fourth world and the beginning of the fifth world, according to Hopi tradition. And so Godfrey Reggio heard these prophecies, heard these stories, and I'm actually emailing these to you. I'll email you part of the original prophecy, at least the 9 signs of the end of the fourth world, and then a talk given by Thomas Banyaka, who was a Hopi elder at the UN in 1976 that references these prophecies. But they talk about the end of the world and kind of the coming of industrialization and this sort of apocalyptic end times. There's also some very interesting Christian analogs that talk of this white God and the return of a white God. Really interesting. Godfrey Reggio chose to focus on the aspect of it that deals with industrialization, and specifically some of the last prophecies that talk about the land being crisscrossed by spider webs and things like that. So as you do the reading and look at that, you can also watch the film, and I believe he references it in the film too. Title of the film is taken from these prophecies, Koyaanisqatsi, which means life in turmoil, life in disarray, and kind of this notion that we're in this constant struggle, either against ourselves or against nature. That's kind of open, I think, for interpretation in this film. So the other aspect of this film that's important is the soundtrack. The soundtrack was composed by Philip Glass. Philip Glass, if any of you are into music, is probably the preeminent minimalist composer in the United States. Philip Glass had achieved some notoriety as a composer prior in the 1970s, and prior to this film. Godfrey Reggio had heard his work, specifically Einstein on the Beach and the Akhenaten series, and was interested in having Glass score the film. And Glass actually said no, he didn't want to do soundtrack work, he thought that was beneath him. And Godfrey Reggio approached him twice, he was turned away. Both times Philip Glass saying, no, I don't do film work. So Godfrey Reggio actually took some of Philip Glass's other pieces and put them with the film. So some of the footage that he had, he actually synced up with some of Philip Glass's other work, took it to New York, showed it to Glass, and said, look at how well this fits. And Glass finally caved in and said, okay, I'll do it. So the music for this is really, really important. It really sets the stage, I think, and really provides, I guess for lack of a better word, the dialogue throughout the film. The only real words that are used in here is the word Koyaanisqatsi, which is repeated over and over and over again in that deep droning bass voice. Other than that, there's no words. It's just minimalist composition, which I think adds to the tension and to the drama of some of the scenes. But again, this has become a modern classic. Philip Glass, since this point, has scored lots and lots of other films, realizing that his work works really well in the medium of film. So yeah, Philip Glass is an interesting character. He's kind of an eccentric, as most composers are, but whenever Luke and I were talking earlier this weekend, whenever you hear Philip Glass's work, you know it's Philip Glass. It just sounds like Philip Glass. And so if you've gone through this film and you watch it, you know what Philip Glass sounds like, and you will recognize Philip Glass from here on out the rest of your life. So you're welcome. It's a wonderful gift. Okay, so I think that's all that I've got for you. That's probably enough to bore you half out of your mind, but this is a really important film, and I'm sad that I'm not there to see it with you. I hope that you are engaged by it. I hope that you actually find it worthwhile. I know I certainly do. I never get bored with it. I always notice something different when I watch it, and I think that's what makes it timeless. It makes it a piece of art. Luke was talking on Monday about the aesthetic elements of the film, and so I've thought a lot about that since Monday. And I think a lot of what we have here, and the reason that it is so engaging in spite of the lack of dialogue, is that it's a constant dialogue between the modern world and the natural world. And we know from psychology that pictures of the natural world soothe us, and that technology, and specifically some of the technology, the frenetic technology, the explosions, the things like that Reggio presents us with, are very stressful and actually get us hyped up. And I think it's that constant stress and relaxing. So if you go to a hospital, you see pictures of nature, right? Dentist office, things like that. There's pictures of nature there because they calm people. Psychologically, they make us feel safe. On the other hand, you have these explosions and technology and people and crowds and just the pace of modern life, and that is very, very stressful. And so just like a story has these peaks and valleys, tensions and resolutions, I think within this film we have the tension and resolution, the kind of juxtaposition of the natural world and the modern technological world. And that's really that interplay between those two elements, the modern and the primitive, gives us the energy and the staying power that it still has. So anyway, I'm going to shut up, and I hope you enjoy it, and I will see you next week. Bye.